Greetings, friends. In this presentation, we're going to be talking about the very most fundamental understandings of emotions and their purpose and place in our life. Maybe a good place to start would be with a rather generic kind of definition of emotions. Emotions comes from the Latin word emovere. E means to go someplace or to go in a direction, and movere means to go to provide impetus towards that direction. So basically, what emotions mean is that it's the directing of the individual towards a particular goal or away from a particular object. Uh, for our purposes, what we're going to be using as a basic definition of emotions is that emotions basically either move us towards that which is good for us or away from that which would bring us harm. Um, but part of the dilemma that we'll be engaging in this class is what's called the heart-mind problem or the heart-mind dilemma. Uh, Philosophers throughout all of Western recorded thought have realized or understood that we are beings that are often in tension with ourselves. Blaise Pascal put it this way: the heart has its reasons of which the mind knows nothing about, and posited that there was basically two parts to us that are completely separate from each other. David Hume, same thing: reason is and ought to be the slave of passion. Um, Seeing that there was two basically competing different parts to us, one a rational part and one an emotional part, which has led to two conflicting view of emotions. One, I'm going to call it the hydraulic view, and we'll be using the imagery of a hydraulic pump or a hydrant, a water hydrant, that where just things come that's like spewing out of them. And in this view, the individual really has no control over the emotion. The emotion just happens. We even use that kind of language. You made me so angry, or I fell in love with you. Notice that either in the first one, it's the object of the emotion is the individual, the other individual. You made me angry. Or the second one, we use the passive voice. I fell in love. The intentional view, the view that we'll be taking in this class, is that we are actually an orchestrator of the emotions. Now, it may not feel that way at times. It may seem like we are being visited by something that takes us over, but we will be positing that that actually is something that we ourselves have generated. The hydraulic view of the emotions is that emotions exist totally independent of thought, and they affect our consciousness, and they often force behavior on us. These forces are unleashed when we are provoked, goaded, enticed, or in any other way when emotion demands that we are discharged, that we have to do something because something inside of us is motivating us, inclining us to do that. There's a lot of philosophers and psychoanalysts who have this view of emotions. Carl Jung said that there are things in the psyche which I produce, and those which I do not, but which produce themselves and have their own life. Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman pretty much have the same kind of view. Goleman says we have two minds, one that thinks and the other that feels. So this hydraulic view of emotions is summarized by Stephen Horst, who suggested that the moments of passion, such as jealousy, anger, lust, or hunger, are not things we bring about by action, but rather they are things that quote unquote happen to us, even though they happen entirely within us. We are passive with respect to them in two senses. First, they come upon us unbidden, and we cannot simply will their coming and going. Second, we are often unable to resist their control. So we act out of anger, out of fear, and so on, in spite of our considered desire to behave otherwise. A very famous philosophical tradition, the Stoics. We even use that word, stoicism, to refer to people who actually do not either acknowledge their emotions, feel their emotions, or are swayed by them. So for them, the Stoics, the emotions are completely unnecessary, and we'd be best to not even to deal with them, to be rid of them altogether, because they really don't bring about any objective good. Contrary to that, we're going to call the intentional view of emotions. Modern day thinker Martha Nussbaum popularized this view of emotions, but truly has drawn on 2,500 years of Western philosophical thoughts to take this view of what emotions are and the purpose that they serve. For her, emotions are what she calls evaluative judgments, and they are about the important objects in our lives, objects we believe essential for our own well-being. When we look at these emotions in depth, there's far more thought and purpose and intentionality in emotions than we might initially believe. So the important part is that these are judgments that we make instantaneously, oftentimes it seems, in such a way that it seems like we're not even in control of them. But when unpacked, it will be seen that we actually have quite a bit more to say about the emotions that go on in our life. She actually uses a great little phrase called upheavals of thought. And if you keep that image in your mind when we talk about emotions, you have a fair idea of what emotions, how emotions work. Upheavals captures the idea of dynamic, of something erupting, something at work, but they're thoughtful, that they have a structure to them, which we'll be talking about in just a moment. So upheavals of thought, things that come upon us, but if you unpack an emotion, you'll see that it has quite a bit of structure to it. So the purpose of emotions then is that they're not inconveniences or barriers to the good life, but they are indispensable windows to our soul, and they are also guides, so that they actually are moving us in a direction that is for our well-being. And I'm pretty much convinced that even what we think of as negative emotions are actually goading us or motivating us or moving us towards directions that are ultimately we believe to be helpful. So we call them windows because of an emotion, we'll be able to see what kind of a person we're really like. And they are guides in that they move us in a direction that will hopefully lead us to a more satisfying and fulfilling life. Now, one of the things we want to do in this class is not just to give you a theory of emotions, but also to contextualize it and frame it in light of in light of who we are as spiritual beings. And one of the things I think that's helpful to look at emotions is to look at fundamentally what they're designed to do. And basically, emotions are designed to bring us to a deep and profound sense of fulfillment. And the reason for this is because fundamentally, as human beings, we have an emptiness. We are striving for something. We want to go somewhere. Henry David Thoreau said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. You can see what Pascal said and St. Augustine said, same kind of thing, that there's something in us. We would not be content to wake up in the morning and stay in bed all day long and do nothing. It would kill us. Imagine being in solitary confinement with nothing to do. That is hell on earth. So because we have to do something, we have to engage with the world. We need things from the world. My opinion, emotions then are the companion to that effort, companion to that work. Another way of taking a look at it would be to go back and remember your Psych 101 class in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all have needs. He, at the very bottom of the pyramid, put our physiological needs to sleep and to eat, and so on. Then we have safety needs. We need to protect ourselves. We have need to belong to others, and we need to feel good about our lives, and we basically need to self-actualize, to be all that we could be. And in my take on all of this, emotions are the companions that move us when we feel a deficiency towards an object or a situation or a set of ideas that will fulfill that need. We'll draw a little schematic in a moment to help illustrate that. But I think keeping that conceptual framework in front of us is actually the most helpful way to look at emotions. I'm going to use this chart. It's a chart of my own making. I hope it makes sense to you. But in this, it has the four critical elements in the construction of an emotion. Over here, you have the soul or the self, and you can posit all of these needs in this area. The soul of the self needs to be safe, and self needs to be in relationship with others. It needs to belong. It needs to be self-actualized. So think of all of that right here. And then we develop a set of strategies about how to get those needs met, or we assign value to objects in our world or situations in our world which would satisfy us. We want a good job, we want to live in a great community, we want to go to a good church, we want to have great friends, and so on. So we realize, or we think, that if we achieve these, then there will be a certain part of ourself that will be satisfied. We have beliefs about objects. Money, we think, can, if it can't buy happiness, at least it can, help us avoid misery, or however else you would want to describe the particular aspects of the objects in your life. There's thousands, probably tens of thousands, that we attach value to because of what they do for us when we obtain them, when we're in their presence or their company. And so all of these values and beliefs and strategies are about objects in our world: money, friendship, relationship, significant others, educational opportunities. Now, what I believe is that emotions are the link between the objects in our world and the self that needs to be satisfied them. So, for example, if us who need to have love and belonging, we have love and belonging needs, we need to be in relationship with somebody. Well, when we see somebody out in this world who we believe will satisfy that need in us, we move towards them. We invite them for coffee. We invite them over to our house for dinner. If we have needs for significance, we have ego needs, well, same thing. We want to find a place where we have a job where we can work and achieve those. So we're going to take a look at this quite a few times and see how that structure might help us understand. So based on this chart, I have a little project that I want us to do. And basically, I'm going to have us fill in each 4 of these areas, which will correspond to these 4 stages of emotion, component parts of emotion. And to do that, I thought it would be a good example to take Jesus and his cleansing of the temple. The emotion that Jesus felt was anger. Who made him angry, or what was the object who quote unquote made angry, or in whose presence anger occurred? Well, it was the money changers who were taking advantage of the worshipers. These worshipers came to Jerusalem from out of town, all over the empire. They had coin of the realm. They needed to change it into Jewish coins for the ritual purposes, to virtual objects. Well, these folks would charge would charge interest rate, or would take a deduction, and so they were using the temple as an opportunity to make a buck. Well, Christ became angry with this. And why did he? Well, he had a belief that the house should not be used for this purposes. For this purpose, it should be used for the purpose for which it was intended. So that was his belief. And why was that belief important to him? Well, that belief was important to him because this was his father's house. The scripture says, "The zeal of thine house has eaten me up." I mean, he was consumed by wanting what was good for the Father. And when he saw that these people were taking advantage of the temple to it took away from the worshipers' ability to fully enjoy the experience because they were being ripped off. And who knows? They made them mad. They had to go back with less money than they should have, and so on. So these 4 steps, excuse me, these 4 steps are important steps in the process. What's the emotion? Who's the emotion directed at? What are the values or beliefs that are at the base of all of this? And then, why was this important? So what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about the last time you were angry. And who were you angry at? And what value or belief or strategy did this person violate? And why was this important to your well-being? So, for example, let's say your daughter made you late for an appointment and you were angry. Well, the anger was directed at a child. The child was the object. And what strategy does believe did this violate? Well, you wanted to be on time someplace because it was important to you, because being important to you makes you look like a good person, look like you're on top of the situation. So go ahead and take some time and take a look at this and fill this out, and then I'll have an assignment for you back on Moodle.